Please welcome Robert Parrish.
Thanks, Eric. Good morning, everybody. It's an honor to be invited back here today, 2 years after I first spoke. 2 years ago, we were talking about the changing game, or the evolution in sourcing, and some of the things that we needed to be taking into consideration. And today, 2 years later, we talk about the changes that have occurred and what is actually being put in place. So I think if you could think back, a lot of these issues we already know. You've heard them this morning. They've been around for the past couple of years, and they're issues that will only be more prevalent in the coming few years. Supply chains are becoming far more complex than ever before. We have opened operations in Africa as well, because it is true, sourcing is now starting in Africa. And that gives us a whole range of new issues to deal with. The demographics, the culture, the supply chains, honestly, are more complicated than ever. And I do not know if they will ever be easier for us to manage going forward. We've always been dealing with the rise of labor, the cost of labor as we've moved through Japan, Taiwan, Korea, and into China, and then on into other Asian countries. It's something that we all take into account. It's fundamentally built into the cost of the product. This is definitely driven this change in sourcing. A lot of companies that have moved from perhaps China to another Asian country have found that the quality levels have not been there as they were expecting. Then they've had to hodgepodge the systems together and even take some product back to China for final finishing. It's been really challenging, and organizations really do need to find solutions to managing problems before they happen. And no one has a crystal ball, okay, but we need to stop the old-fashioned process of inspect it before it goes in a container and hope like hell it hits the shelf on time. The speed to market that we need to deliver these days does not allow this to happen. We need, and I said this 2 years ago, we need to move from a mindset of quality control to quality assurance. Many, many years ago, and quality assurance, the term dates back to World War II. And when we think back, it was all about getting components to go into ships and planes that would work every time. And the concepts are no different to our supply chain. We want the product in the container and in the store, and we want the customer to buy it. We don't want the returns. We don't want the quality issues. But the problem has been with the changing speed in which the markets or the supply chains have to react. That quality control, that final inspection or test, has resulted in limited quantities, or in some cases no quantity, arriving for the store. So it's really given people, it's really forcing people to really rethink the way that they deal with the quality. And 2 years ago, we were talking about the fact that we needed probably to build in better IT tools. And this is the nuts and bolts, or the fundamental basics of the alliance that we announced today. We said 2 years ago that merchandising and sourcing cannot act independent of quality. Somehow we need to build these together so that people build a quality product. I didn't say high quality, I said quality as intended for the market. And that product is produced, manufactured, and delivered on time, with the right level of quality every single time. We still have issues. We know that, we have some naughty players in the field that will try and produce a nice product, and when it arrives, it is not the same product as you looked at before it left before it left that country. But in general terms, most collaborative supply chains are now really starting to move on, preparing a supply chain to deliver a quality product. Putting an IT tool around this is really, really important. Capturing ideas and issues from the very, very, very initial concept of the product, when perhaps you're doing a collection or range review and you're starting to see the product coming in, right through to collecting some of the reason for return and taking that back into a system and allowing that data or those statistics to be looked at again further down the process when we go to reorder is hugely important. It's not just about the supplier, it's about the region. AZO dye in textiles is prevalent to particular colors and quite often prevalent to particular regions. And that is because inferior quality product is being sold by some distributors. It's not necessarily an issue with one factory. So you need to start managing some of these trends. And the only way to do that really is with putting together some pretty strong IT tools and starting to look at the trends of what is going on around you. We know that many brands, as I said before, have PLM systems or ERP tools, and that's fine, that's great. But quite often are very disjointed from the quality attribute or quality aspects. So after 2 years or 18 months of real serious work between CBX and SGS, we've actually formed an alliance. And we believe, in talking to a number of customers, that this alliance is really going to change the game for sourcing, both for quality and for sourcing itself. And really we're talking about the alliance helping retailers and brands to get their product to market with the right quality, with the right quantity, on time. That's really what it's talking about. And I'll just spend a few minutes really talking quickly about the concepts involved, not the solution itself, but what we found that needs to be addressed when putting these particular systems together. What we found is that a lot of the ERP modules or systems that were available were really not addressing collaboration. We saw that a lot of the non-core modules were not really addressing the quality. We found that the landscape of these different tools, really people were actually not implementing a lot of the systems the best way possible. We still saw a lot of spreadsheets being used. We still saw, in fact, I spoke to some retailers and I said to a quality manager, I said, when was the last time you were in your PLM system? He goes, 4 or 6 months ago. How the hell do you run your business if you're not using the tools you've got? Oh, we do it on spreadsheets. And how big are your spreadsheets now? Oh, pretty big. And how many problems are in those spreadsheets? You don't want to know. And I'm going, yeah, okay. But what we're starting to, people are really starting to realize that it's not necessarily just the IT tool that's the problem. And I was talking to Michael just on the break. It's the organizations that are implementing those IT tools, compounded by the number of locations and complexity of your operation. People are resistant to change. Change has got to be something that is good for them, okay? But it's also, you've got to get constant implementation in every location. If China does it, or let's say Shanghai does it different to Guangzhou, and Guangzhou does it different to Shenzhen, and they do it different to Vietnam, and goes on, you end up with a multiplicity of complicity. It just does not work. Even ourselves in implementing IT tools, we've seen the same problems. So what we've come up with CBX is really nuts to bolts, creating something that's a bit more simple. So the concept was to integrate very much quality control and quality assurance services with IT as a backbone. So in other words, allowing systems to drive the process. I think everybody gets way too many emails these days. And quite often, people will overlook something in an email. And how many times has that overlooked email come to actually hurt us? The concept of putting an IT tool behind it allows easy notification and easy follow-up, allows a good process or good workflow to actually address those steps that need to occur. We were talking about, quite often we are asked to come in when collection reviews or range reviews are being conducted to look at new products and let merchandisers know about some of the inherent safety issues that may be with some of these products. And we found that that advice was never being captured. So we really looked at developing with a CBX a solution that captures that first information and all the way through the process. And a way of being able to look at individual supplier issues, regional issues, or product-related issues, and really start to manage the process. What we found is that, we work with CBX to actually help to configure some of their modules a little bit more on the quality attributes or quality aspects rather than pure supply chain. Those areas identified in orange were the areas that we worked on. We've actually been talking to a number of customers about the new tool, and we had a very large European retailer here in Hong Kong just a few weeks ago, and when they left the meeting saying this is exactly what we want. This is what we expect from a quality combined sourcing tool. So we do believe that we've now started, or we have listened to the consumer, the customer. The customer's telling us their pain points. And for me, it's about the learning, not just the solution. Yeah, it's nice to stand up here today and talk about selling a solution, but it's really the learning points. Everybody's got issues with handover. Everybody's got issues with lack of transparency and communication in processes. And these are issues that must be addressed when you are implementing any new program. And the good thing about, and here I go again plugging CBX, but the good thing about CBX is the highly configurable workflow. It really allows each implementation to be done customized for an organization, which we found pretty much second to none. It is really a very interesting tool. So, what we've basically outlined, I pretty much said all this, highly configurable, really looking at your internal processes, aligning an IT tool and your service providers to the process that you run, but at the same time looking at the processes that you operate and benchmarking a little bit against other processes. Do you have the right process? Everyone thinks that the way we do things, we do it the best, but it's not always the case. We need to learn from others. So spend a bit of time analyzing your process and think about, in some cases, can it be done better? It's really important to make sure that with any IT tool that we make it as template driven or as friendly as we possibly can for those that are using it. And one of the things in talking to customers that they did quite like was the fact that you can customize individual templates inside systems to allow easy re-implement or reuse of what is being developed, which was great. Some of the things that we also looked at, that this, I mentioned it, communication, critical control paths, being able to monitor what's going on in an easy way. Certainly customers have been giving us a lot of feedback that this is an absolute must. Information overload is real. I think we all suffer from it, and we all want to get away from it. We've got to find easy alert systems to allow us to follow up on critical issues. In talking with a bunch of different organizations, it's very clear that everyone in this room's margin is under pressure, be it a manufacturer, be it a retailer, be it a service provider. Our shareholders expect more, our customers expect to pay less, and we have to find ways to trim in the middle. There's a lot of overlap in what is being done between merchandisers, between quality, and even between service providers. And if you implement the right tools, you can seriously expect to get some pretty good benefits. Some of the objectives that we've set in talking to customers, you can see on the board. The bottom one is probably the most important. Help people to increase gross margins. Now, if you can do that, and it's very simple to do it, if you cut down the amount of labor that we use in processes and use tools to drive the process for us, if we stop having two people doing the same thing over and over again and find smart ways to implement. We're not talking AI yet, but eventually artificial intelligence, augmented reality, all these things are going to have a very important part to play in the processes into the future. I think this is all developing technology that's still being put in place. Fundamental issues we have today is simplifying that supply chain. Simplifying it, shortening it, getting the product to market, but getting it to market in the expected quantity at the expected quality. And unless you bring your systems and your service providers together, you're going to have an awful time competing in the market. I think I've said a lot of this already with regards to the true benefits. communication between stakeholders and collaborative environment is just hugely important. You know, the fact that we're not talking, you know, a service provider standalone as SGS. You're talking multiple service providers. You're talking IT systems, be it extended PLM systems such as CBX, working with other PLM and ERP systems. We've got to have a collaborative environment where the information's being shared. If we can't develop that, then we're going to end up with individual systems being implemented. There's just no communication between them. So one of the things you need to really seriously consider is how you get the systems talking to each other, but trying to simplify things. I think that a lot of people may have overcomplicated the implementation and development of systems to protect their own jobs, to be really honest. You know, if we can simplify things and make things a lot more transparent, much easier for people to make decisions. You know, ship decisions rather than, you know, decisions about what do? I don't have the volume. Turnaround time at each step in a process is hugely important. I mentioned before, there's no good inspecting or testing a product at the end of a process. It's good or it's bad. There's nothing you can do about it. You need to start analyzing and spending a lot more time forward in your process. Spending time thinking about the inherent risks of a product. Thinking about, you know, we've had issues with formaldehyde in a particular glue. Starting to look at testing the glue before it is used in production, rather than waiting till the shoe's manufactured and saying, oh, I have a problem. If we just move, again, from control to assurance, we can get things done. We can push things out the door on time. But unfortunately, we're still not at that point in many of your organizations. And that needs to be the first focus. Before we start thinking about AI and all these other wonderful things, we need to do a fundamental change and move from quality control to quality assurance and put some IT tools around it. You know, unique platforms, unique ways of sharing information are a must. And when we were looking at different IT tools that could be utilized, and CBX was very open to looking at other suppliers and how we could have a larger collaborative environment. You know, it's not difficult these days to really get information being shared between systems. You know, with good integration, push and take, you know, it can be done. Costs a little bit of money perhaps to set it up, but think about it as a longer term saving. One of the issues that we've got is the more systems you have and the more manual processes you have, the more errors you're inherently going to have. So really consider very, very seriously about doing as much integration and removal of manual steps as possible. Managing accurate quality information as part of that supply chain, as part of that sourcing decision, can only have a positive outcome. At the moment, quite often you'll see organizations sending their own auditors in to do capacity audits. You'll send a third party in to do a social audit. They'll send a separate third party in to do a technical audit. And quite often the information's stored on 3 different places. When it comes to a merchandiser that's trying to make a decision about where to buy from, it's very difficult for them. So this collaborative environment allowing not only your suppliers, the retailer, perhaps some of the traders as well to act in there. It's hugely important if you're going to start shortening your supply chain time, or shortening the time to market, and really working to reduce quality issues. Overlaps in who's doing what is really important. You know, I hear a lot of retailers saying to us, cut your cost. Okay, can I cut my level of service? Oh no. So you end up in this fundamental issue of our labor cost goes up. Okay, just like you, everyone wants to pay less for your product or your service. Where does all this end? We've got to actually be more collaborative. We've got to work together more. The service providers, the IT providers, some of the agents as well, who are not necessarily as cooperative, and create a more collaborative environment with the actual suppliers. And this particular alliance that we've created with CBX goes an awful long way to doing that. You know, what we found is making a big difference is really innovation. Trying to innovate and think ahead of what is going to be required by our customers in the next couple of years. And everyone's talking about these really weird and wonderful things, the robots. We put robots into, they're great, but they don't do everything. AI, yeah, it's nice. Chat box, yeah, it's really nice having a non-person sitting in reception talking to people. But it's really about the now, not the future in 2 or 3 years from now. Taking on the right IT tool can really deliver some interesting benefits. And people say, well, this alliance is so new, what do you know? I think between CBX and SGS, we've got something like 160 years of experience and something like 85 years experience in retail. I think we know a little bit. 140 years ago when we first started as a company, we were looking at the quality of commodities. Commodities became other consumer goods throughout the 30s and 40s. We together have created, I believe, something very unique. And it's maybe not necessarily the right solution for you all here today, but I think you need to understand what they've done, because I think you need to take some of those approaches as well. Collaborative environments, trying to find the best balance between best practices on quality assurance with reduction in quality control. Working to shorten processes with third parties to allow you to get your product to market a bit quicker. I know, having the right system in place is going to bring more trust and more transparency. A collaborative environment where information's being provided from a supplier that's less than truthful will eventually be very easy to see. It will be very easy to see those suppliers that are actually truly trying to improve the quality of their product through proper scorecarding and benchmarking between different factories. The right tools with the right processes can help you to deliver your product on time. Too often these days, people are just hopeful. And I do mean hopeful. We think it's going to go on time. We've got to change that approach. It's got to go on time, and it's got to be the right quantity at the right quality. Otherwise, we upset our consumers. You heard today that consumers are expecting more, I would say, mid-level quality, and are prepared to pay for it. That's where we need to be thinking, not just getting product to market that's okay. And the only way to do that is to better control processes. And we do believe that, the putting together a proper, what we're calling an extended quality supply chain solution is the only way for you to do that. So I'm not going to go in and do a big sales pitch, but certainly we need to be thinking now quite seriously about the future. Tim and the team are here, and spend some time talking to them and learning from their experiences. I think you'll be very pleasantly surprised with the level of development and dedication that their teams actually have to delivering something that's agile and actually evolving to market needs. So Eric, I'm going to stop there and pass back to you.
Okay, thanks, Robert. Thank you.